guys, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be doing another book video, which you guys know I haven't done in a while, but I really wanted to do an updated one because I've read a ton of books and I really wanted to be able to get this up so I could talk about all the books that I wanted to talk about without feeling like I was rushing it, which I do feel like I rush these videos kind of because I do have a lot of reads to kind of recommend to you guys, and I also want to share with you some of my most disappointing reads of this, half of the year, or a portion of the year. I guess I should say it's not half of the year anymore. I was doing these like bi-annually, but now I'm just kind of doing them whenever I feel like it. So I'm gonna go over 10 books in this video, but I've read more books than 10 books since my last video, so I'll be sure to put a list down in the lower bar with my star ratings of them, and then you can also go to my Goodreads account, which is always linked down below, and you can click on the red tab or the red button, and it's all the books that I have read, and I have reviewed every single book that I've read, so you can read my reviews there as well, and you can also follow me or add me as a friend on there if you guys want to. I'm also going to reference my Goodreads reviews for this video because I feel like all of my thoughts are really well put together in my Goodreads reviews, and so some of these reviews in this video might be similar to the Goodreads reviews, but I just want to make sure that I'm getting across everything I want to say, if you know what I mean. So let's go ahead and start off with the first book, and if you guys follow my Goodwill haul videos, you saw that I hauled this book from Goodwill, and this is called The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender, and this is by Leslye Walton. And I was actually so excited to read this because it was on my TBR, so when I found this at Goodwill, I was so excited. And this book is a young adult kind of magical realism type of book, so it's kind of set in like real life, but there's magical elements. I gave this book 4 stars because I feel like the first half of the book was like a 3-star rating, and the second half of the book was like a 5-star rating, so I just kind of combined those and I gave it 4 stars. This book is such a uniquely written book. Now, if you guys are familiar with Edward Scissorhands, the movie, that's one of my favorite movies, then you'll probably like this book if you like that movie because it has that vibe, that weird, whimsical, kind of bizarre and quirky atmosphere. Like, I feel like if this was made into a movie, it would be just like Edward Scissorhands. It kind of has like this casual, creepy quality to it that's not overdone, but it's just kind of like weird. So this book is about a girl who is born with wings, and it kind of tells her story about what her life is like with wings and how her relationships kind of develop. And the interesting thing about this book is it deals with love in all sorts of different ways. It deals with like romantic love, friendship love, like obsessive love, love of things like food and stuff like that. And the main premise of the story, or the main like moral of the story, is love makes us fools, or like love makes us do crazy things. And once you kind of know that, reading this book makes you just love it even more because you start to see that kind of like moral come out in tons of different places in this book. This book has a lot of trigger warnings though for murder, rape, suicide. So a lot of dark topics in this book, but I still thought it was just really well done. This book was just very atmospheric. It just had this really unique quality to it that I adored. I just think that this is a great book. If you want a really easy read that's maybe a little bit on the darker side but still kind of fun, definitely pick this up. It's a young adult, so it is going to be a little bit of a like easier read, but it still has some really like deep plot lines. So I really liked this. I thought it was really good. I gave it 4 stars. Next up is Eliza and Her Monsters by Frencesca Zappia, and I've been wanting to read this for a super long time. This has been on my TBR for a long time, and I finally went to Barnes & Noble and decided to pick it up, and I'm so glad I did. I gave this book 5 stars. So this is about a girl who is extremely awkward, really shy. She's very anxious. She has social anxiety. She's depressed. Everyone in her school thinks she's really weird, but what they don't know is she actually writes this online comic called Monstrous Sea, and it's one of the most well-known online graphic novels of the time. Monstrous Sea is just one of those huge fandom type of things, and nobody knows that she's the writer of this graphic novel. Well, one day she meets this boy who is actually the most well-known fan fiction writer of her webcomic, and he doesn't know that she is the writer of the comic, but they end up, you know, kind of building up a relationship, and then it comes out that she is the writer of Monstrous Sea, and it's just such a cool, unique story. And this book just feels so good while you're reading it. Like, it's just, there's something about this storyline that you are so interested in reading. Like, the whole entire time I was just like, what is gonna happen when people find out that it's her? Like, what is gonna happen when he finds out that it's her? Like, I was just so infatuated with this storyline for some reason. I thought it was so captivating. There's definitely some suicidal trigger warnings in this book, and it also deals with like depression and things like that, but I would have to say, like, if you want a just easy read, something that's super easy to get through, something that's quick to get through, I would definitely recommend this. Like, it just gives you like those good feelings reading it. And I would also recommend this for the upcoming fall and winter seasons, because this takes place in like the winter and fall holidays, like Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and I definitely feel like it has like that cozy vibe to it. So if you want a book that kind of has that fallish vibe, I would definitely recommend this. It takes place in like a bookstore. You just want to curl up with like a thing of tea and a candle burning and just like read this book. Next up is a memoir. You guys know that I love memoir style books, and I saw this actually on the counter at Barnes & Noble, and I didn't even know that this book was coming out. I had no idea. I just kind of saw it and read it, and I was like, that is up my alley, which you guys will see why in a second. So this book is called Because We Are Bad, OCD and a Girl Lost in Thought by Baily. And this book really caught my attention, for one, because it's a memoir, and for two, I'm just interested in reading about this. I've said in the past, I've had my experiences with OCD in my life. I won't probably go too much in depth with all of that because it's just not something I want to talk about on YouTube. So Baily is actually a model, and she has been suffering from OCD her entire life, and her OCD was really bad. Like, it was literally taking over her whole entire life, and she was going through these mental gymnastics to try to, you know, make herself feel better. Her compulsions a lot of times happened in her head, and this book was just so well done. Like, if you want to understand what OCD is like, read this book, because this will really help you understand. Like, I felt like with this book, there were some times where I even started to feel kind of annoyed with what she was saying, but in like a good way, because it really showed like what she was actually dealing with and how annoying it would actually be to have like her specific compulsions. Like, it would just drive you insane. And I just feel like she did such a good job at explaining like what it's like. So if you want to know more about it, or maybe you know somebody in your family or a friend that has it and you want to understand it better, I would definitely recommend this. It's just a really well done book. I read this book really fast, and it's probably one of my favorite memoirs I have read in a really long time. It's just super well done. I really like it, and it's not that long either. It's a pretty short book, so I gave that 5 stars, and that also made it onto my favorites list on my Goodreads, so really good book. Next up is a book that was super random. I don't even really know why I picked this up exactly. I think I was just in a mood for like this type of book, which is not very often, but I had heard so many good reviews on this, and everyone was like raving about it, so I was like, I need to try it. And when I heard the synopsis, I was kind of like, it just sounded a little bit different, a little bit unique, not really something that I would pick up on my own, but the fact that so many people raved about it is kind of why I ended up picking it up. So it is called The Kiss Quotient by Helen Hoang, and this is just your basic contemporary romance. Now, I'm not a contemporary romance like fanatic. I don't read them very often, so me saying that this is really good, I wouldn't necessarily take my word for it, because I don't read enough of them to really like know 100%, but I thought it was entertaining. So this book is about a girl. Her name is, what is her name? I can never remember. Stella. And she has autism in the form of Asperger's. So if you don't know what Asperger's is, it's basically like a high functioning level of autism where you just tend to be a little bit more sensitive to like loud noises, and you like routine, and you tend to be a little bit more socially awkward. You don't really like understand social cues as well as other people, and she thinks that she just sucks at like relationships and having sex, and she just thinks that she's not very good at it. So basically she just hires a male prostitute, and he teaches her how to have sex and how to enjoy it, and kind of like teaches her the ropes, I guess, to make her feel more confident, more comfortable about it. And you know, things progress from there, and at first I was kind of like, really? Is that really that good? But it is a very cute story. I loved the characters. I found them very relatable. I thought they were really cute, and I just thought it was a good, fun, lighthearted, like contemporary romance. Like if you're in the mood for like a romancy type of story, I thought it was cute. I think I gave this 4 stars, I think. So it was cute. I wouldn't say it's like the most amazing book of all time. Like it's not like a deep storyline or anything like that. Like you're not gonna get anything out of it. I don't know. I just thought it was cute. Next up is a book that I wanted to read so bad, because this book has been raved about by so many people, and this is actually a trilogy, and this is the only one I've read out of the trilogy, but I knew I wanted to read this because I do like sci-fi, and I was just interested in this book. Plus, I love the covers of this trilogy. Like, they're so beautiful, and I was like, oh, I want those on my shelf, and they have really great reviews. Like, I just really want to see what they're like. So it is called Illuminae by Amie Kaughman and Kristoff. And this book, it's a chunker. Like, these books are not tiny books, but these are really unique books because they're actually told in the form of like transcripts and documents and like instant messaging and emails. Like, this book is not written in actual story form. Like, as you can see, every single page is written in the form of a document of some sort. And so this book seems big, but you actually fly through it. And I can say at first, when you start out this book, you're gonna be like, what is this? Like, what am I reading? This is so weird. It takes you a while to get used to it. Like, it literally took me, I would say, about 75 pages to really like fully understand how this book was laid out and what each document was. Like, I read the first page, I was like, what is this book? I thought this was gonna be the most boring book of all time, just based on the first page. So please, before you throw in the towel, please just get through like the first 50 pages and then you'll just fly through it. It is so good. So basically what this is about, this couple, I can't remember their names, it's been a while since I read it, but it's this couple who end up breaking up, and then right after they break up, their planet gets like invaded by this big enemy ship or whatever. So everyone has to board these ships called the Alexander or the Hypatia. The girl gets put on the Hypatia, the boy gets put on Alexander. Now the girl in this book, she is an amazing hacker. Like, she can hack anything. She's a super intelligent girl. She's the main character. I need to know what her name is. Katie? I think it's Katie. So anyways, they end up on different ships, but then they start messaging each other, instant messaging each other. And on the Alexander, the ship that the ex-boyfriend is on, a like zombie plague breaks out. And it's not zombie, like zombie, they don't say zombie, but they act like zombies, meaning they like eat each other. And if you get bit by one of these people that have this disease, then you will get the disease and then you will want to eat people. So it's basically like a zombie type of plague, and that breaks out on the Alexander, and she wants to get her ex-boyfriend off that ship, and her mom is also on that ship. So she's trying to save everybody, and she's also trying to hack to the system to get the artificial intelligence back up, whose name is Aiden, who I freaking love. Aiden was such a good character. Man, oh man, was that writing fantastic. My favorite character in this book is Aiden and the ex-boyfriend, and both of those characters were written by Kristoff, so I definitely want to read more Kristoff books because his writing of those two characters were just phenomenal. Like, Aiden was like robot poetry. I'm not even kidding. And very deep, like, messages if you really looked at it that way. I think the thing I liked about this book was like the exploration of artificial intelligence and where the line is drawn between like a sentient being and artificial intelligence, like where that line is drawn. Character development was so good. I love characters with very clear personalities. I feel like that's what makes lovable characters, is when you can definitely pinpoint their character traits. Katie was super sarcastic and kind of like short and rude and just kind of like blunt. She had like that very feisty personality. And then her ex-boyfriend was very like funny and witty and sarcastic, very Star-Lord from like Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, that's the vibe I got from him. And the characters were just so well done, and I love characters that are well done, and this definitely had like really, really good characters. So I have Gemini on my shelf and I cannot wait to read it. It's gonna be so, so good. I haven't read it yet though. I'll probably read it next year sometime, but seriously, if you like sci-fi, I would definitely read this, and if you do pick this up to read it, just push through like the first 50 pages because it's kind of a hard read to get used to at first. Really, really good, and you're gonna love it. I gave this 5 stars. So the next book that I read is Vicious by V.E. Shwab, and this is the first Victoria Shwab book that I've read, and I really love her writing. But this book is basically about two boys, or guys, they're not boys, they're two college-age guys who are best friends, Eli and Victor, and they're super intelligent guys. They're going to college for like science and like pre-med and all this other stuff, and they're actually working on their thesis. And Victor decides to do his thesis on adrenaline and like kind of how our bodies react to adrenaline and things like that. And then Eli is doing his thesis on EOs, and EOs are extraordinary people. So basically people that have superhuman powers, or like mutants, I guess you could say. And in this book, you know, EOs aren't something that are known. Like, people still think that they're myths, they don't exist. It's kind of like our world. But he is out to prove that EOs actually exist. So Eli and Victor actually discover how EOs become real, or how people gain powers. And so what they want to do is they want to see if they can create their own EO, and they do it on themselves, and they both become extraordinary people. Extraordinary people. And by the end of this book, they actually become enemies, and they're fighting each other, and they both want each other dead, and they have their reasons for wanting this, and it's just such an interesting story of a villain against another villain, and oh, it is just so good. And actually the first quote in this book, I'll read it to you. It literally defines what this book is about in just one quote. It says, "Life, the way it really is the battle not between bad and good, but between bad and worse." That's literally what this book is about. It is so good, and I love villains. And actually it's really interesting because me and Travis always talk about villains in like books and stories and movies and stuff like that, and we always love talking about how some villains are more likable than other villains. You know what I'm saying? Like, some villains, you can understand them a little bit, but then there's other villains where you just hate them so much. And I think that this is a really interesting book because it makes you kind of ponder what makes a villain so hated and what makes some villains more likable. Because Victor's evil. He's a morally gray character, but for some reason you like Victor far more than Eli. And I think it's such an interesting thing to contemplate, like why you do tend to respect Victor, but you hate Eli, even though Victor and Eli are both morally gray. I love Victor. Victor's literally one of my favorite characters in fiction. I love his character in this book, and I can't even tell you why. And I love his relationship with Sydney and Mitch and the dog. Like, it's just such a good little like group of people, and I just love the characters in this book so much. I feel like this would make an amazing graphic novel. The graphic novel for this would be fantastic. I just love it. I love the characters and I love Victor. I just like him. I like him as a character, even though he's not like a good person. I still love him, and I don't know why. Okay guys, next up is probably my favorite book of this video, and it is called Stolen by Lucy Christopher. If you have not read this book, please read this book. Like, this book messed me up so much, I can't even explain it. Like, I thought about this book, I would say, for like a week after I read it because I was so blown away by how well she wrote this story. So basically this is about a girl, I can't remember her name. I'm so bad at remembering names in stories. Is anybody else that way? Like, I can never remember names of people unless I really like their characters, but for some reason I can never remember her name. But it's about a girl who basically she's like I think 16 or 17, 16, and she was abducted from an airport by this guy who has been stalking her, and he drugs her and he takes her from an airport, from her family and all of that, and he takes her out into the middle of the Australian outback, where she's basically stranded, because if you don't know anything about the Australian outback, it is huge. Like, you could not find your way out of there without surviving. And he basically just holds her captive, but he's not like mean to her, he doesn't rape her or anything like that, he just is obsessed with her, like he loves her. And so he holds her captive out there. And the interesting thing about this book, and the thing about this book that really messed with my mind, is because I just tend to be somebody that follows my mind versus my heart. And I feel like this book kind of made me think with my heart, and I'm so not used to that, and it confused me so bad because at the beginning of this book I was like, I know what the author's gonna try to do here. Like, I know she's gonna try to make me like the captor. Like, I know that's what her goal is going to be, and the whole time I'm like, I'm not gonna fall for this. And sure enough, at the very end of this book, you like the captor in a weird way. Not fully, like, you don't fully like him obviously, but like, you feel for him and you're like, why? And the whole time I was like mad at myself for feeling for this captor. And the thing that's interesting about this book is, like, you hear about Stockholm Syndrome, but it's kind of a hard thing to understand. Like, you're like, how could you fall for your captor? Like, obviously, like, they're bad people. Like, how could you fall in love with them? And I've never understood Stockholm Syndrome 100% until I read this book. And you can understand someone's psychological pathways that they go through to end up falling in love with their captors, because you kind of do, and you can understand why she did. And she's like, do I have Stockholm Syndrome, or do I actually love him? Or is that what Stockholm Syndrome is actually falling in love with your captor? Like, or do you just think that you are? And the whole time, like, you're so annoyed with like the lawyers that are like, you never have to see him again, and you're like, but what if she wants to? Like, but then you know deep down in your head that you shouldn't think that way. You know what I mean? It's just such a mind-effing book. I'm just like, why is this book making me so confused with my own emotions? Like, the thing that really makes me pick a book as like my favorite book or a favorite book is when they make you think, and they make you think in a way that you're not used to thinking. Like, they're kind of taboo in a weird way, and they kind of mess with your mind a little bit. Like, that will always make me love a book, and this is one of those books that kind of mess with your mind. Next up, I wanted to talk about a book that I didn't like, and I wanted to talk about this book because you saw this in the same Goodwill haul that The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender was in, and this is The Sky is Everywhere by Jandy Nelson. The entire time, I am cringing with the cheese. This is the cheesiest book I think I've ever read in my entire life. It is so cheesy. I literally couldn't handle it. Like, all of these tabs, these aren't even good tabs. These are tabs that annoyed me. First of all, this book is teenagers. Tell me what teenager says this, okay? Does this sound like something a teenager would say? They both play musical instruments, and this is what the boy, the high school boy, says to her.
Your tone is awesome. So lonely. Like, I don't know, a day without birds or something.
And then, like, the bed part. If you guys have read this book, there's a bed, just a random bed in the middle of the forest, just a bed. And the guy's like, why is there a bed in the middle of the forest? And she's like, well, there's this man who likes to put a bed out in the forest, and he changes the sheets sporadically so that when there's random passerbyers that don't have a place to sleep, they can sleep in the bed. And I'm like, so you think it's a good idea to just go get in this bed, this random bed in the middle of the forest, and like be all romantic in this bed that is probably covered in spiders and gross dirt and just randomness? Like, you never know who's been in that bed. Read this book if you want to be like cringed out of your mind, because that's what happened to me pretty much. And the main character is so mean to her family. She's the biggest brat. And it basically is about her sister who dies. And she basically decides, oh my god, I miss my sister. I need to like get with her boyfriend. So she like gets with her boyfriend, and then she meets this other guy. And she's like, oh, but I really like this guy over here. So she like hooks up with him, but then she's like, oh my god, and then she runs back to her sister's boyfriend, who her sister's dead now, and she like hooks up with him. And then she's like, oh, I'm just such a horrible person. And then she goes back to this other guy, and then she goes back to her sister's boyfriend, and she's like, oh my god, I'm such a horrible person. And it goes on like that for like the entire book. I can't do it. So this next book is another book that I was really hoping to like. This book was really hyped up, probably the most hyped up book of the year, I would say, and so I decided to read it, thinking I would really like it because it was so hyped up, and it is called Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi, and I gave this book 3 stars. It wasn't great, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't fantastic. Like, it wasn't a 5-star book by any means, and this book was so hyped up, so many people liked it, and I'm just not on that boat. Like, it's one of those books where you just feel like, why do I not feel the same way as everyone else? Like, what's wrong with me? This book just was very predictable to me. I didn't feel like there was anything in this book that really had me like surprised. There was no big twist, nothing really woven in to anything else that makes all the pieces like come together at one specific moment where you're like, oh my god, like that's crazy, or that's so cool. Like, there was none of that. It was basically just like a quest story, very predictable. It just kind of happened. There was climaxes, there was conflicts, but there was just nothing that made me like super excited. You know what I mean? I don't love books where I don't get that like oh my god moment, or I don't get like massive feels. Like, I didn't get the feels with this book. And not only that, like, I didn't love the characters. I thought the characters just made really bad decisions. Like, the main character just, I didn't like her decision-making skills. I thought that she just made bad choices. And I don't know if the author was trying to do that. The romance in this book was so unnecessary, and it was so unbelievable. Like, the insta-love in the romance of this book was so bad, it hurt. Like, it made no sense. It was so unrealistic. I couldn't handle it. And then, the other thing that really bothered me about this book was the fact that there was like zero urgency in this entire book, when at the beginning of the book they say you have to do this ritual at this island, and you have to get to this island in this short amount of time to be able to perform this ritual. You're gonna have to rush, like you might not even make it in time, like you gotta like hurry. And then literally through the entire book, there's like no urgency. There's even a point where they're like, oh, let's just spend the night in this village and party it up with the other diviners for no reason. Like, all of a sudden they have all this time. Like, at the beginning of the book they said, like, you literally have no time. And even if they did magically come across all this time, they still should just go. They just need to go. They just need to perform the ritual, and when they're done with the ritual, then you can go back and party. Like, focus on what you need to do and then do the fun stuff. Like, I felt like these characters were just kind of immature. They just didn't make the best choices, and I didn't feel like the characters differed very much. Like, I felt like their personalities were all the same. They didn't have any key characteristics to their personalities that made them unique. They all talked the same. They all, like, acted the same. There was just no originality to any of the characters, and I think that's why I didn't feel connected to any of the characters really throughout the story. I just felt like they were just bland characters in a weird way. Now, I'm not saying that this was bad. Like, I obviously read the whole entire story, and it's a pretty big book. It's a good, like, quest story, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's amazing. I probably personally wouldn't recommend this, but I'm not going to say not to read it. Like, if you've been wanting to read this for a long time, or you have friends that say it's so good, try it. Because there are a lot of people that love it, and I don't want to deter you because there's so many people that love this book. You might really love it as well. So it's just my personal weird opinion. I'm definitely in the minority, I think, but it just wasn't my favorite. I probably won't continue with this series. I know it's going to be a duology, I think, or a trilogy, I'm not sure, but I'm probably not going to continue. I mean, I might. We'll see. Maybe the second book will be better, I don't know. But I can say the diversity in this book was amazing, and I think that there is a really good deep message in this book that can kind of relate to today's world a little bit, and I think that that's a really, really good thing about this book. Great diversity. So in that sense, great. Last but not least is a book that I just recently finished, and it is called I'm Just Happy to Be Here by Janelle Hanchett. Janelle Hanchett is actually a blogger for the blog Renegade Mothering, and I've been following her blog for like 5 years, I think, so for a really long time. Her blog is literally, I think, the only blog that I've kept up with on a consistent basis and a consistent, like, time frame. And the thing about Janelle's writing is she's so raw, so real, and so honest. Like, it can almost make you feel uncomfortable, but I love when people are just so real. Like, I just love that kind of writing, and her just like sarcasm and candor is just, oh, it's what makes me love her writing so much. And not only that, she's hilarious. She's she's just so good at being funny in words. So this book is about her, like, addiction to drugs and alcohol and how she became a mom at a really young age, and her blog is basically about motherhood and just like the honest truths of motherhood. It's kind of like the Scary Mommy brand in a blog. So if you kind of like that whole scary mommy, honest, raw, just like realistic mom life type stuff, then you'll like this because it definitely has that like quality. And it's basically just her struggle through alcoholism and drug addiction, and her trying to overcome that and failing and overcoming it and failing, and her trying to be a better mom. And it's such a great, dark, sad, but great memoir if you like that kind of like memoir. I wouldn't necessarily say that this is my favorite memoir I've ever read, and I think partly it's because I can't relate to the drug and alcohol problems, but I did like the motherhood like parts, you know, where she just kind of talks about the realistic, you know, parts of mothering. And yeah, I just thought this was really good, and I just really wanted to kind of know more about my favorite blogger because I have been following her for so long that I kind of have like this odd connection with her. But yeah, it's definitely a darker read, so if you don't feel like being depressed, then maybe it's not the best time, but it does have some really good stuff in it, and I just want to support my favorite blogger because I really do like her work. So anyways, you guys, this is the longest video of all time. I am so sorry. I cannot help myself. I talk about books. I could talk about books forever. I've even thought about making a booktube channel specifically for books because I talk about books for way too long. If you guys would like to see a book related channel, like just a channel strictly on book stuff, maybe I could do that, because I do feel like these videos get a little long. I might even have to put this in like a 2-part like series. I don't know. So anyways, I hope you guys liked this video. Let me know if there's any books in this video that you're gonna read, or if you're gonna put them on your TBR, or if you've read any and what your thoughts were on them. And also let me know down below just like what you're reading, if you have any recommendations, and just comment something. I love to hear what you guys have to say about books and stuff. So anyways, thanks for watching, guys. I will talk to you in my next video, and I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye!
a sight for my soul.